What is up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 5 of the Gaming Station podcast. I am Chadimus, I am your host, and I am here today again with Mr. Patman. How's it going?
What is up, guys? I'm doing good. Happy to be back.
Heck yes, and Mr. Patty, what is up?
Oh, it's my day off, so I'm chilling. I'm ready for this podcast. Excited.
All right, and Patman, what did we bring to the table today? What is the topic of discussion?
Well, like we suggested last week, today is Legend of Zelda.
Ooh, definitely excited for that. And Patty, do you remember what we talked about last week? What was it like Cyberpunk and all that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started talking about some of the up and coming games, and or like a level of excitement.
Heck yeah, dude. So yeah, last week, guys, episode 4, we talked about Diablo 4, No Man's Sky, which is, by the way, where is it, guys, now?
It is on Game Pass.
Woo!
And it is cross-platform as well.
Yes.
So definitely check it out.
I have a feeling we predicted that somehow, because it was...
maybe a little.
I think it was like the next day.
Yeah, dude. It really was like...
It was perfect.
The same week where we're like, we think this week's going to be the week, and then it dropped.
Yep.
Perfect timing.
It was. So yeah, we talked a little bit about Breath of the Wild 2, which brought us to this week's episode and this week's topic, Cyberpunk 2077. So if you guys want to see some of that stuff, check out episode 4. It was a previous episode. If you're on YouTube, you guys can see that in the description. If you guys are on any of the podcast station, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and soon to be Pandora, you guys can check that out on the playlist. So, Patman, so let's get started with this Zelda. So the very first Zelda that you played, what was it?
First one I played?
Yes.
If memory serves, it was A Link to the Past.
Oh, okay.
What about my very first?
What about you, Patty?
I can't remember because I was so young, and I just remember playing it on the Game Boy, and I remember just falling in love with it because I remember I got that Game Boy, and there was 2 games that came with it: Power Rangers and Link.
Oh, dude,
Zelda.
Awesome! Yeah. So, Patman, what was the first DS game or Game Boy game? I think there was only one.
I'm pretty sure Link's Awakening was the first Game Boy game, but I don't know if that was Game Boy Color. I think. So
okay.
If it wasn't a Game Boy Color. I mean, there were different iterations of Game Boy.
Oh, so. I did have Game Boy Color.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that was Link's Awakening then.
Yes, Game Boy, Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, which I didn't actually play that one, but when I looked at everything about it, it looks very much like a ported Link to the Past. I know it's a completely different story, but just looking at some of the pictures and stuff, that's what it reminded me of. So that's really cool.
And I think it definitely gives off that vibe as well.
Nice. So mine obviously was the original, because I'm old, the 1986 Legend of Zelda. I think would be one of my top 5 of that. So Patman, you said you originally played which one?
A Link to the Past, but I've played Legend of Zelda and Adventure of Link, but I've played them ported through the Switch instead of when they originally.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to deal with the shaking of the game cartridge and blowing into the end of it, hoping to God it would work.
I did that with A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. Which luckily
that one I actually played.
That luckily didn't have too big of an issue. So did you ever play those, Patty?
Well, like I said, I had the Game Boy, so I definitely had to deal with that cartridge issue. And what drew me to the game, really, Link's Awakening, was I got the puzzles, honestly. It was the puzzles, and it also kind of gave me like a Pokemon vibe, like the way they designed it. I don't know why. It just kind of looked like it was like a version of Pokemon in a way for me. I don't know why. But I don't know. It kind of just drew my attention. Plus, I mean, who doesn't, want to be like Robin Hood in a way and, just running around with a shield and sword.
Yeah,
stealing rupees and all that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I also read that you can be labeled as a thief in that game if you steal from the shop.
Oh,
That is not something I seen in any of the other ones I played. I know one of them you could steal. Maybe that was the newest Link's Awakening, and that's why. But I don't remember that whole labeled as a thief
system.
Well, and they brought it. They brought it back in the Switch remake as well because you could steal in the remake, and they would label you as a thief. So that actually stuck around as like an Easter egg type.
Gotcha. So it seems like most of the Link/Zelda series was on the same premise of the gameplay, except for one. One of them stands out a lot of being a very different type of game, and that would be the 1987 version, which was The Legend of Zelda 2, or The Adventure of Link.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, did you play that one, Patty?
I did not, no.
It was different. Like, I liked it myself. It's very hard, but it was very
hard.
It was like they were trying to follow the Zelda, or not the Zelda, we're talking about Zelda, the Final Fantasy path. And I think I do remember reading something about that. So it's very much like the very first Final Fantasies. And it was neat. It was just very hard to play, though, as a kid. I played it later on as an adult, but man, if you ever have a chance to play that game, Patty, you definitely have to check it out because it's completely different.
I mean, I understand, like, you want to make a game a challenge, you know what I'm saying? You want to earn the game, you understand what I'm saying? And that approach in any game is rewarding to me because just like kind of like Dark Souls and stuff like that, the fact that it's so hard to beat that game, it brings a new kind of enjoyment to it whenever you do beat it.
Yes, agreed. So we got past the first 4 games. So then we're on to pretty much the turn of the century, I think, for the Zelda franchise, which would be the 1998 installment of Ocarina of Time, or however you guys say that.
Correct. Ocarina.
Okay, so yes, my first experience with that game was unfortunately watching my brothers or my dad play it. What about you guys?
So my first experience was definitely a little bit of watching. The way I see it is, I had my save file, and you only got 3, and my dad had his save file, and he said, "Never touch my save file," and that's how it went.
Is that how it goes, or did you accidentally delete it?
No.
Okay.
You know what? There might have been one time when I was real little when I actually did. But outside of that, no, I think I respected that rule because I would watch him play, and he was in a much different part of the game than I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Patty?
Well, actually, I wasn't even born when the game came out, actually, because I'm 20 now.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So, if that says anything. But I did end up playing it. I ended up playing it when I was in daycare, actually, because at that point I had a DS.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. And one of the things was, like, all the kids around me, they had, DSs too. And so it became a thing where we'd trade games for a day or two, and I ended up, as, me being a little kid, wanting to play different games. Someone else was playing it. I saw them, and I wanted to play it. So I had it for about 2 weeks, I'd say, and it was probably one of the hardest games. I got so mad at it all the time, and I just switch and play Pokemon instead.
Oh, yeah. I don't blame you there. And I can
because
see
the save system in the game, the fact that it's like there's a time limit as well. It made it just a completely new game to me, and I think that's why I love games today is because of that fact that game it learned me to love the pain of losing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then finally beating it.
Yeah, I understand that completely. I think I can relate to because I didn't play the Game Boy or Game Boy Advance versions. I played some 3DSs, and I can see what you mean about the Pokemon, because I remember actually just looking at it, but I also remember playing on the 3DS. I can't remember which one, but it looked very much like one of the Pokemon's games, the way it played. So I can definitely see that.
And I definitely saw that comparison as well with Link's Awakening, as you mentioned it earlier, I thought about that. I was like, yeah, it was kind of structured similarly, and it was on the same handheld platform. Like, I definitely got the same vibes, like you were Red walking through the bushes, just a little different,
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
for me, Ocarina of Time was definitely like what made me fall in love with the series. As far as like all entries go, it's definitely like I liked Link to the Past. It was my first game, but Ocarina of Time is the one that I played through more times than I can possibly ever count, and I still play it over again to this day.
Yeah. It's oh man, I can't even think of the words, but
it has that
It's
replayability.
iconic.
yes,
Yeah.
it's iconic. Yeah. And I just, every time I think about it, I want to play it. And it's just like, I don't have time, but it's such a good game.
Enjoyed the challenge.
Yes, very much so. So, and you guys know that they just did about a year, I think it was a year ago or a year and a half ago, where they made it multiplayer. It's more of a mod, but you can play with a friend. Well, I know that, yeah, they remastered it too, but like, I guess you can join in with like up to 4 people now and play together. I don't know if you can see each other. I don't remember.
I don't know either.
How would that work with like puzzles then?
I honestly don't know. I know I've watched Markiplier and a few other people play it, and it was really, really cool. But just to think that you could play, a game like that, multiplayer, it's just amazing. So I see that Link's Awakening DX came out after that. Was just the remastered version on the 3DS or a Game Boy Advance, maybe. I'm not sure.
Advance. At
Then
that time, 1998, yeah.
Then after that is a game that I had completely a million times of trouble just starting the game. It's also 164. Can you guys guess which game that is?
Oh, it's Majora's Mask.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, yeah. See, I never, when I was younger, I haven't even tried it as an adult. When I was younger, I couldn't. I was like, 2000? I was maybe 13. 14, 15, 16, 17? I don't remember. But I was too young to understand the mechanics of the game. So how did you guys do with that one?
Well, that was when I was born.
So, Majora's Mask, I had kind of a similar experience as you, Chad, because when I was born in 96. So the game came out when I was 4. So I definitely couldn't start that game. The concept of the clock and time and it moving backwards, by the time I was playing it in probably 2002, I did not understand what was going on. So I couldn't beat it as a kid. I probably got a little ways into it and I was like, why can't I go anywhere? This isn't like Ocarina of Time. I don't understand how you're supposed to make progress if you start over after 3 days. So that is one that I had to wait until I was a lot older to go back and try and beat and actually play through all.
Yeah. The game was done with the same engine that they've made the Ocarina of Time on, kind of like what we're hearing they're going to do with Breath of the Wild 2. Hopefully they don't do anything like this, but I was not expecting what I got. The whole time issue and racing around, because I'm a person that likes to just slowly play a game.
Right.
And I think that's what really got me was you really can't. And I know that now that I'm reading, we didn't have the internet back then, but now reading, like,
exactly.
I guess there's technically a way that you can do it a lot slower, but definitely did not know that back then.
Especially like back then, I didn't understand a lot of things about the game that I know now because of the internet. You're right. Like, Majora's Mask back then, I couldn't just go and Google, like, how do I get through this temple before my 3 days are up or anything like that. Like, you could, now I know that, you can play the Song of Time backwards or whatever, and it will slow down the clock so that if you want to take it slower, you can. But I would never have figured that out when I was 6 years old.
Yeah, I didn't even know that, honestly.
That's a thing you can do.
I'm hoping they put these on the Switch, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to see every single one of these that we're mentioning right now on the Switch, because I think currently right now there's only the 2.
2.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, if you want to go back to the original is on the NES online, so you can play the original and possibly the second one, or no,
Is that
Link to the
an emulator?
Past.
The first two, Legend of Zelda and The Adventure of Link,
Okay.
are both on that, and A Link to the Past is also
On the
Switch.
SNES. Okay, cool.
That's it.
So 5. You only have 5 Zeldas on the Switch currently.
Yes.
So, and what were you asking? Yes, I guess they basically made an emulator on there, but it's Nintendo's, so it's patented.
Exactly. So, Patty, what was your experience with Majora's Mask? Because you played the DS version, correct?
Yeah. So I was a bit of a nerd in high school. I don't know if you know this or not. And I did like the game club, and so we obviously kind of do what we do now. We used to talk about different games, play different games, actually compete against each other too, stuff like that. And that's whenever I actually found it. So I found it 16, 17 years after it came out. So obviously at that age, I was a teen and I was, madly in love with video games. I kind of figured it out, but it was definitely a new challenge because I'd say it's probably one of the first experiences I had when it came to basically a game that was meant to be speedrun. And the concept of a speedrun never occurred to me because same with you, Chad. I like to experience a game thoroughly. I like to do all the side quests. I like to get 100% of the game out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I definitely had a hard time because when I first started it, I just like you, Patman, I had no clue what to do. I was stuck on that game for days trying to figure out how the hell do I get past this? And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like spoilers. So I kind of refused. My pride kind of got in the way, and I was like, "There's no way I'm looking this up. I'm gonna figure it out." And it took a very long time, but it was enjoyable.
Well, and I feel like Majora's Mask is also a side quest dream for a lot of people because there's a lot of side quest content.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that even though there's a lot of side quest content, it's still hard to get all that stuff done playing the game because it's side quest content, and the game only gives you 3 days essentially to do anything. So you have to really have a drive to do the entirety of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was a kind of a takeaway that I didn't like because I was very main quest first. I didn't want to speed play through the game per se, but I always did the main quest and then went back and completed side quests.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Did you ever play Witcher 3? I just mean the concept of the fact that decisions in the game can decide the outcome of the game.
Yeah, I've played it and I understand that concept. Yeah.
I think that was Majora's Mask was an early concept of the idea where it's if you really want to complete this game, you're going to go back over again to learn each new part. And yeah, I can definitely see that being a drawback, especially if you're older and you have a job and you just don't have time to, go through the whole game. But I think it was probably an early stab at that idea.
Yeah.
Of, different endings.
It's very possible because you got to remember Fable came out not too long after, and it took off because of that concept of the things that you do in the game. Definitely justifies what the end of the game is, and also changes perception of the AI in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is crazy. And obviously now it's oh, okay, it's cool. But back then, all you did was play the game. You did what the game wanted you to do.
Yeah,
then
the idea
it was
that your decisions influenced what happened was not a well-developed concept of it.
Yep. And I'm reading now, so I didn't know. I mean, I should have known, but I guess it's about to hit its 35th anniversary, and it says that Zelda's 35th anniversary could bring all of the 3D games to the Switch. Now, obviously, that's just a lot of people hoping and wishing, but it says
would be awesome. Yes.
There's been rumors circulating about the upcoming 35th anniversary celebrations for the Super Mario Bros. Series, according to a number of different outlets. Nintendo is planning on bringing all of the major 3D Mario games to Switch this year, including ports of Mario 64, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, and Super Mario Sunshine. 2021 will mark the 35th anniversary of the Legend of Zelda series, and it's possible that Nintendo could be planning a similar event for that franchise.
That'd be amazing.
So, and then it lists exactly what we list: Breath of the Wild, Link to the Past, a remake of Link's Awakening, and Zelda 2, the Adventures of Link are all currently on there.
Right.
Which I think that would be amazing. I mean, I want to play all the ones that I've never played too, but I have a 3DS now, and that doesn't really. All I have to do is buy it. I guess I can't stream it, but I can buy it.
Did either of you play Oracle of Seasons and Ages? I did not.
I did not.
I did not either.
So we have no commentary on that one.
No, I have no clue what that even is.
We're not very good.
I know a little bit about it from my interest in the series and reading about it, but to me, it's not like a standout entry in the series. Hope I didn't offend any Oracle fans out there.
Well, and I think the biggest problem was, and even though I was growing up in that time and working, didn't really have too much time, and Halo was kind of in that area too. So, but it sucks that they went full-fledged handhelds for a while there. It looks like
they did
quite a while until the Wii. I know there was one or two on the GameCube, but I didn't really play much GameCube.
Well, and with Oracle of Seasons and Four Swords, there was a good 2, almost 3 year gap there where they were only doing handhelds. So for me, that was probably right around the time I was finishing Ocarina of Time, like all the way, and like trying to beat Majora's Mask, maybe playing some other Nintendo games that came out in there, some Mario parties and things like that when I was a kid. But Wind Waker was the next big console one for GameCube, and that's the one I played.
Well, wasn't Four Swords on GameCube?
No,
I don't believe so.
Adventures was on GameCube.
What was it?
Four Swords was on Game Boy Advance.
I did play that game.
So there's a Four Swords Adventures, which is Link to the Past remade with 4 people. Okay, I see it now.
Kind of. It's very much, I wouldn't say it's exactly like Link to the Past, but it's, I think it's underrated, actually. I really liked Four Swords Adventures. It's a bit linear, but they had a lot of great concepts, and they definitely, it was a good entry series.
It looks cool, and I remember I bought it. I had it on the GameCube, but I don't know where it went, which really annoys me. I never played it. Actually, my dad might have it still, so.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it looks very. I mean, they obviously redid it, so that's cool.
Yeah. Well, and Wind Waker, I think between the two, as far as GameCube entries go, Wind Waker was the more standout thing. I think Four Swords was kind of just a little bit of a plug in there to say, hey, we're still focusing on the series. Because there was a 4-year gap between Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which was the next major console entry. So
yeah, and that also brings up another thing too. I also enjoy the lore of games. And since you said Wind Waker was the next big title, Majora's Mask was big, but Ocarina of Time was probably the biggest comparison-wise. And I unfortunately never played Wind Waker. Now, I own it, and I believe you just recently... Was that the one you just recently played?
Yeah, I borrowed the HD version from you.
Okay. Oh. So that one, it definitely was huge. But looking at this, I don't know if you guys looked into the timeline.
That's what I've got open.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's exactly what I just brought up too. Because I watched about 4 videos way back because actually it was right before Breath of the Wild came out. I wanted to know what was going on because I had missed so much because of all these handhelds, which Switch is technically handheld too, but it's a console as well. So I wanted to know what I missed, and then I just got confused because there's so much to it. So those just basically, what Breath of the Wild compared to all of the other games? Is it a prequel or is it a post?
So I actually have the Zelda Encyclopedia within my reach right next to me.
Oh.
It sits next to my desk, and I have read it more than once. So I'm very familiar with the lore, and most theories place Breath of the Wild as actually the beginning of one of the splits in the timeline.
Yes.
It's
So
just a matter of which one.
So basically, what I've learned is there's a curse, and Zelda and Link are cursed to repeat the same life over and over again.
Absolutely. That is well explained in Skyward Sword for the Wii, because Skyward Sword is the very first chronological entry in the series. It takes place before everything. It establishes how they started the cyclical process. The spoilers alert, the very end boss is he casts the
don't
curse
spoil it
that,
too much there. Yeah, don't spoil it too much there.
He casts the curse that creates the cycle. So without spoiling too much,
well,
yeah.
So I heard whenever you kill the final boss, killing him enables the curse.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because I know in Ocarina of Time, he doesn't actually do anything, whereas I heard in other games he does.
Yeah, so in Skyward Sword, he casts the curse that creates the cyclical process, but the time lapse of 7 years inside Ocarina of Time's storyline is what creates the triple split in the timeline after that.
Okay, because I see...
So it's like, yeah.
Unified, child, adult, and fallen timeline.
Yes.
You can't really mess with time, you know?
Yeah, exactly, because it gets all funky.
Well, and the only one that messes with time really is the Ocarina, right?
Exactly. But that's the big one. But it only takes one, because it's like chronologically, it's Skyward Sword before everything, then the Minish Cap, then Four Swords, Not Adventures, the one from 2002, and then Ocarina of Time. Those are the first, and those happen in order. And
wait, what was the first one you said?
The very first one is Skyward Sword.
Okay, it was hard to read this this thing I'm looking at. Let me see if I can blow it up.
I've got my book open at this point, so we're just looking straight at, and this is the official Nintendo time.
Nice. Well, I know it was always a fan theory, and then I know, what was that, last year or the year before that, the timeline, they published what you're probably holding?
I believe it was either right before or right after Breath of the Wild released. They published the official timeline, and they published the official Zelda Encyclopedia and Hyrule Historia.
Now it says Wind Waker is the adult timeline, but isn't he still a young Link? Okay.
Yes, so the timelines are named after which event in Ocarina of Time they follow.
Yeah.
So the child timeline is under the assumption that you go back in time at the end of Ocarina of Time, back to 7 years before, and you stop Ganon.
Gotcha.
The child timeline assumes that is the case, and it follows how that would play out in Hyrule going forward. The adult timeline is that you go 7 years into the future, you beat Ganon that way, and it follows how Hyrule developed after that point. The other option is the hero never wins at all, and he loses, and that's the hero who's defeated, the fallen time. So it splits it based on which ending of Ocarina of Time you choose.
So what about this weird Ganon went from being a pig/hog to a dude?
Okay, so
I know it's Ganon. I know it's Ganondorf as well, but
exactly. So that's sort of a thing about the fallen timeline versus the other two timelines. In the child timeline and the adult timeline, the idea is that Ganon is beaten as in his human form, essentially, especially in the child timeline, because he never gets the Triforce of Power in the child timeline.
Yeah.
In the adult timeline, he gets it, but the hero wins, so the Triforce is returned.
It's a cause and effect.
Exactly. So if the hero loses, in the Fallen timeline, Ganondorf, the Triforce of Power, sort of turns him into that Demon King hog thing that you see in all the games.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's usually a sign. Most people see that as like a sign that a game falls into the Fallen Kingdom timeline, is that in those games, he takes the form of like the hog-faced monster, typically.
Gotcha.
So that's sort of and that's why the best theory I've seen, and it's all speculation, but the best theory I've seen puts Breath of the Wild between Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past in the Fallen time. Because in the actual timeline, it says between Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past, the Seven Sages seal away Ganon, and then the imprisoning war takes place. And they think Breath of the Wild is about the imprisoning. Because we don't have anything about that yet.
I can't wait to play that again. Or to play it all together. Because I know, like, there's so much lore in that one game compared to all the others. Obviously, the Ocarina of Time has a lot of lore, but out of all the other ones, I don't see that much just from watching or even playing, like, A Link to the Past. Like, it's really weird. Like, in A Link to the Past, you, like, wake up in a bed, and was it your uncle?
Yeah, it's your uncle.
Gives you the sword, and it's just like, I don't know. That one really weirded me out because it didn't make any sense to me.
And it makes sense now that we have the timeline, but I see where you're coming from, because back then I was like, I don't see how this could possibly be connected to the other game.
Yep.
But in response to your original question of like how Wind Waker affects the story, because that's a whole chunk that you missed out on.
Mm-hmm.
Wind Waker is the first entry in the adult timeline, and Twilight Princess is the second entry in the child timeline. So the idea is that in Wind Waker, it's like after the 7 years, and you defeat Ganon, and the gods seal away Hyrule, and that's why you're on like an island, and you're a kid, because that particular person, the Link, so to speak, that you play as in Wind Waker, isn't technically a descendant of the Link in Ocarina of Time, like he can be in other games.
Well, I heard he was the alternate version if Link in Ocarina of Time never would have grown up.
Now, see, that's...
You heard of that one too, I'm guessing.
That's the opposite timeline, the child timeline, in which after he never grows up, that's what kicks in the events of Majora's Mask.
Okay. So
then Majora's Mask, then Twilight Princess. And Twilight Princess is, again, you're playing as a Link, but in that timeline, according to Twilight Princess, that Link is actually a descendant of the Hero of Time. That is what I've come to learn.
Gotcha. It sounds about right.
Yeah, in one timeline he is a descendant, in the other he's not, but each timeline kind of depends on what happened to Ganon.
Gotcha. So we got that. What were we diminish a cap? Okay, so now back to Twilight Princess, which I feel like should have had a huge turn for, and it might have. I mean, the only thing that pushed me away was turning into a wolf.
Really? That's what pushed you away? That was like a really cool concept in the game.
It changed the game completely for me. Because it went too fantasy.
Agreed.
Right,
Interesting.
It pushed me away as well. I was I don't know, when I play a Zelda game, I want to play Zelda. I don't want to play a wolf. I don't know.
Correct.
That's just how I felt about that game in particular. Like, I mean, Skyrim does the same thing, but Skyrim is like this big fantasy world, huge RPG. You do whatever you want. But Zelda it's Zelda. I don't know.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, because Twilight Princess is actually probably my second favorite entry after Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
I think what turned me away the most was the Wii version, because they made a version for GameCube, and I've played both. But the Wii version had motion controls, and they weren't like Skyward Sword motion controls, where they were really specific, but I just preferred it on a controller. But for me, the wolf thing, I actually enjoyed, and I don't know if either of you have played it all the way through. Have either of you played Twilight Princess all the way through?
Nope. I got to the wolf, and I didn't like it at first, but I gave it a chance. Yeah, I gave it a chance and did not like it even more, so...
Okay. Well, to clarify, the wolf thing isn't as cool at first as it is later in the game.
I'm sure.
Without spoiling, like...
It's just a weird curse that just didn't make sense to me.
Well, it doesn't say a curse, that's the...
Yeah. It just seemed misplaced.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Absolutely. I just feel like Twilight Princess had, like, the best spin on that universe, because each entry has its own, like, character and personality and style, and I think that's what draws people to it. But I feel like Twilight Princess had one of the best spins on it by being maybe a little darker than before, a little edgier, but also... I loved the dungeons in that game and the art style and the realism of it. That, I think, is what sold.
Yeah. I don't know, it was just weird. And, I mean, they haven't even touched back on it either before or after. It was just different, and it was not what anybody would ever expect them to do, I guess.
I agree.
Which maybe that's what they were trying to do.
That's what Nintendo's known for, though. Majora's Mask wasn't what people expected. Breath of the Wild wasn't what people expected. Sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't.
Oh, I completely expected Breath of the Wild, though. Like, there was no surprise there. It's a Skyrim Zelda. I mean, they had to do something that was more modern.
Agreed.
And that would be open world.
I don't know if I expected open world as different, but I did expect something new.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just, like I said, I don't know. I just didn't understand why they went the way that they did. But, I mean, obviously it was a very big success, and it was very helpful to the Wii, I believe.
It was successful enough that they made a Wii U HD version.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There was definitely demand for it.
So one of them that, I don't know if it came out after, no, it's not yet. Okay, so then there's Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, and then they remade Ocarina of Time on the 3DS as a 3D version, then Skyward Sword.
Right.
Or did we already go over all those?
No, we touched a little on Skyward Sword, but...
I see.
Ocarina of Time, the remastered version, that's the actual one I played. So if I'm being honest, and if maybe the remastered version is different than the original, well then I guess I don't have much input on the original. But if they're very close,
I think it's almost exact, just better graphics.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Ocarina of Time was a pretty good.
They can't change. Like, there's no reason to change that. That literally was the pinnacle turn of Link and Zelda.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can't see them do too much. Yeah, they might have changed because I was looking at the list here, and pretty much they just did a whole bunch of remakes of all the games between 2011 and 2015. Link Between Worlds was pretty much a Link to the Past 3DS version. I know that it was a completely different story, but they used the same world.
It was very, like, same concept, but with a lot of different spin on it. You know, Lorule and Hyrule being the two worlds instead of Hyrule and the Dark World being the two different worlds. Yeah,
which was crazy because I played a lot of that game, Link to the Past. So I remember, looking at the was it Game Informer map and everything, trying to figure out where everything is.
I remember that. That
was pretty amazing. And so, I mean, if you didn't have the Game Informer, you weren't going to find anything back in the day.
Yeah.
And then they did Majora's Mask 3D. Ocarina of Time 3D, which I already said, and then Triforce Heroes 3DS. Did you guys play that?
So I didn't play Triforce Heroes, but it's also kind of a unique title, from what I understand.
Is that kind of like Four Swords?
Not exactly.
Not really.
Not really. It's almost in its own category, to be honest.
I didn't play the game either, but my brother did, actually, and I watched him play some of it. So, I mean, I have some info on the game, but I couldn't say I played it. And say
it looks very Link to the Past-y.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks cool though, but it looks like you can play with 4 people if you connect your DSs or 3DSs.
Yeah. It was like a more multiplayer type of adventure. And I didn't have a 3DS, so that's probably why I didn't play it. But I remember it being like, sure, this is fun. It's not exactly what I wanted from a Zelda entry, but it's not bad either. That was my understanding.
It looks really cute. It looks really cool. I kind of wish I wouldn't have missed out on something like that, but I can always hopefully go back and play it someday. And it looks like you had to maneuver the 3 of you to do a lot of stuff, like the puzzles. So I'm guessing you could control the other 2 characters if you were by yourself.
I would assume so. They usually structure it that way for games like that.
Nice. Okay, so then came out Twilight Princess HD, which we talked about, and then we are up to 2017, which was the rebirth of Nintendo completely.
Well,
agreed.
And that was definitely a rebirth because if you don't count 3D remakes, you don't count Wii U HD remake, between Skyward Sword, there's only one actual entry in 6 years that had any real new story, like a link, which was a Link Between Worlds. But if you didn't have a 3DS with that, then like for me, it was Skyward Sword, and then 6 years later, it was Breath of the Wild, and boy, was I excited.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild, man. I remember watching the preview for it, and like I immediately Facebooked it to my dad. I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I ended up buying them a Switch, and he played it, and luckily was able to play a little bit of it. I mean, he didn't play all of it, but he was able to play a little bit. My brother played a lot of it, so I've only played a very short amount of it, which sucks because being a huge Zelda fan and a huge fan of open world games, I'm surprised I haven't played it more than I have, but in time, because I know Breath of the Wild 2 you got whispers of that, and I know we're going to be talking about that here shortly, but I am really looking forward to that. And then obviously Link's Awakening on the Switch, which is the remake of the huge game that I never played as a kid. So that was really, really cool. And I know, Patty, you actually played it on my Switch for a little bit, and we talked about that in a previous episode. You want to give us a recap of how you felt about it?
Well, I remember you giving me it, and I was so excited too, because I remember we had a long drive that. So, you kind of just wanted to give me something to do, which thank you very much, by the way. I obviously only got to play about, because of how long the drive was, about 5 to 6 hours of the game. And 5 to 6 hours was enough to get the basic concept and to understand that the game is completely free. I mean, Breath of the Wild, it describes the name perfectly. One, breath, because it breath back into Nintendo, obviously, and then the Wild is the fact that it's massive. It was a beautiful game. You got to go where you wanted to. There's not really I mean, obviously there's a kind of a main story involved, but it's really you take it at your own pace and you figure it out as you go. Because when it came to missions and everything, it was more like you just go to one place to the other. People would tell you stories, and then you would use that information and continue your adventure however you want to.
Yes.
When I got off, when I finally stopped playing the game, I finally got into the puzzle aspect of the game, where there's multiple dungeons with I believe I got to the elephant. There's a giant elephant in the middle of a lake, and you got to figure out the puzzle, and then when you figure out the puzzle, you got a reward. And there's multiple in the game, and once you've collected all of them, I couldn't tell you exactly what happened. I'm not sure, but that was the basic main story of the game, was you completing all of those. The puzzles were very interesting, intriguing, and the mechanics in the game, how you move stuff, all the different little powers you had that you had to use to figure out the puzzle. very neat. I fell in love with it instantly as soon as I picked it up.
Agreed. So Patman, considering have you beat the game?
More than once, yes.
Okay, so without giving any spoilers, how would you sum up your experience playing the newest Zelda franchise game?
Having played it through more than one time, I have had a mixed bag of feelings throughout. On the one hand, I love it because it's new, it's open world. A lot of things Patty said about powers and how you use the environment, some little things that really updated the series as a whole. Being able to light grass on fire and then use the updraft, having a lightning storm strike you, I think that scared the living out of me the very first time, because I'm like sparking from a that's metal on my back in a lightning storm. I'm like, what is that sound? And next thing I know, this massive lightning strike just kills me instantly. Blew me away. I was like, was that like Wrath of Hyrule's gods on me? Or what? Like, so on the one hand, the game was great. On the other hand, I felt like it lacked in certain other areas because they were going so big with it. And I'll take that. Every time you do a new concept and it's that new, sometimes other things suffer. But one of the biggest things that has drawn me personally to Legend of Zelda over the course of the series has been the story and the fight with Ganon, and the idea that you're learning songs and it's this whole adventure. And Breath of the Wild did not do that for me. Now I've played it through all the way more than one time. I've gotten all the shrines. I haven't gotten all the Korok seeds because I don't hate myself. But yeah, shrines. Yeah, I've gotten all 120 on a Wii U version and on a Switch version. And,
oh wow.
And it's fun. And getting the reward that you get, without spoiling, getting the reward you get at the end for doing that, while it may seem lackluster at first, is actually pretty great. And they've done things to improve. They've added a lot of DLC, a lot of special items you can find, and I know that the champion of what is it, the Ballad of Champions or something like that. I'm forgetting the name of the DLC, but the second DLC they added fleshed out the story a little more.
Yeah.
But it still, that almost made me crave more of the story behind Breath.
Do you think that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be a second part of Breath of the Wild? Not just a part 2 as in just game 2, because I know they're reusing the engine because why not? It's a brand new engine. But literally a part 2, which they've never done. They've never done a part 2 of any of their Zelda games. I mean, I guess Majora's Mask technically, but not really.
Right. Not only do I think it will be a part 2, but I think they're going to give people what they didn't get with Breath of the Wild 1, because they left so much unanswered. Breath of the Wild 1's story as a whole left people craving many things that the Zelda series is known for, while also introducing a lot of new concepts that people loved.
I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know what you're talking about, and that's definitely an understandable grievance. What I think maybe the word you're looking for is just there's not enough structure in the game.
Yeah.
I do agree that when it comes to those people who love the story and love that kind of structure in a game, that it could definitely be a slight disappointment. But I think just because of the time in which it came out as well, the fact that open RPGs and stuff like that's all the rave right now, is that open world, that immersive experience, and obviously the fact that they're trying to copy that in a way. I guess it just comes down to the kind of player you are. Do you want that story, that structure, or do you want to be able to be free to do what you want, however you want, on your time?
And the thing I have to say to that, Patty, is that I don't necessarily think that it's the type of player I am, because there's no reason you can't do both. I mean, The Witcher 3 is relatively open, to my understanding.
Yes.
And there's still a main storyline, and it's a very good storyline. Like, there's no reason you can't have both. Skyrim had a main storyline, and it was very open world, and it was really popular. But my thing is that they weren't used to making a game like Zelda into an open world game, which is no small feat, to say the least. I'm not bashing them for that. But I think that because that's where they were going with it, that they lost some other things that I would have loved to see. But I don't think it's their fault that they don't have it, because again, you're right. It was popular to do open world games at the time, and there was, again, 6 years between games. I think that they were setting the stage for to use Chad's description earlier, a rebirth of Legend of Zelda. Because after 6 years of doing a lot of the same games, and Skyward Sword as the mainline console entry and not a handheld, it didn't perform as well as they wanted to because of the control system and it being it was a little hand holding with the AI and just very I think that caused them to kind of reevaluate their direction, and that's why Breath of the Wild took so long. Now that we're here, like Chad was asking, I definitely think that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to offer that same storyline and the answers to the questions that we were left asking at the end of Breath of the Wild 1. And I think, if I know anything about Nintendo, they did that on purpose. I think they decided, you know what, this game will sell because it's been 6 years and it's super new, and we're going to turn this negative of not having enough storyline and fleshed out characters, and we're going to spin it for a sequel where we give you what you've been craving.
So, you're suggesting that this was their plan all.
I am.
I think he's right too.
Yeah.
And being that literally, besides Link's crossbow training, which I don't know why that's got the most sold, the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Switch is the most sold Zelda game, followed by Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, and then Twilight Princess, which I have a feeling those numbers are very, very close together. So
I would imagine.
Besides that, Link's Awakening, I know we recently have played that. I don't know about, obviously Patty probably hasn't. That is the rebirth of the original Link's Awakening, which I think was adorable and came out of left field. And we're obviously missing like 3 other games off of this list. We have Hyrule Warriors, Cadence of Hyrule, and there's one other one I can't even think of right now that aren't on this list because they weren't directly, I guess, connected with the whole timeline thing. But real quick, Patman, what did you think about that, the remastered Link's Awakening on the Switch?
I never played the original Link's Awakening on Game Boy, so being able to play Link's Awakening now after I've played so many other entries in the series was interesting because it almost felt nostalgic because it brought me back to a more simple. A lot of the console entries in between have been more complex, naturally, and introduced new concepts in each one of them, things that we didn't have before, and Link's Awakening felt like a step back, but in a good way.
Gotcha.
It brought me back to the days when all you had to do was figure out the puzzle to open the temple, and then you just go in. There's no in-between collectathon or some new concept or some out-of-the-box way to think about it. It's just a very simple, straightforward kind of game, but I really appreciated that because both of the art style kind of goes with that, I feel like, and also I appreciated it because the game takes me back to that simpler time, and I didn't know what to expect because it was kind of cutesier looking, and the way that they took it wasn't necessarily what all Zelda games look like, so I wasn't sure what to expect. But I definitely enjoyed what I experienced. I loved it as far
Agreed.
as
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's just I think it's a very well way to bring Zelda back. Like, I mean, they had this huge hit with Breath of the Wild, and they're probably thinking while they're making Breath of the Wild 2, which has been in production for a very long time. I'm guessing they started it probably at the same time they released the original one, Breath of the Wild, the first one. Because, I mean, it was supposed to come out, I think, here sometime soon this year, but it's been pushed back multiple times. So I don't know if it's just because of the way the world is today, or if there's just a lot more stuff they need to get done. I don't know.
But it's both.
Yeah, and I know you pulled up the same thing. Do you have anything to add to that real quick about the release of Breath of the Wild 2?
The remastered version of Awakening, I do really want to play it, though, because, I mean, the first experience I ever had of Zelda was that first game, the original Link's Awakening. And so you're talking about it now, and obviously I haven't played it yet, but I do plan on it because, you know, it's a remastered version. But the fact that you told me it's cutesy and everything, that does bring me some slight depression, I guess is the word for it, just because it's, for me, it might soil the experience, you know.
Did you play Animal Crossing at all?
No, I'm sorry, but I'm not one of those people that wanted to play that game. I know people are like all the crave for it, but it's just not my kind of game.
It's kind of got that feel, but it looks more like a Zelda. It kind of just feels like a very graphically inclined Link to the Past.
Gotcha.
It's got its good 3D measures to it. I mean, it looks really good. What I mean by cutesy is they brought back like the Zelda look, like because you have Breath of the Wild, you have was it Twilight Princess, and that looked more like an anime / more of an adult Skyrim type game. Whereas everything before that, including Ocarina of Time, was very childish and very cute. It was a very good-looking game that you would want to play as a kid, whereas the future of these games has been a lot more adult-driven, it seems like.
At least until you got to the Shadow Temple.
I feel like it has to do with the fans, too, because like all the...
scared.
Yeah.
I feel like it's also part of the fact that Zelda fans are growing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so, too. Think so, too.
You want to appeal to the fans that you've had at the beginning that are older now that can, you know, handle a game that is obviously more free because they're no longer children.
Yeah, so if you like the original Link's Awakening, it's just that remastered, so don't take away the cutesy thing as being too childish. It's more of, look at Breath of the Wild and compare it to the original Link's Awakening. They're two completely different art styles. But if you played the Ocarina of Time on 3DS, you're going to notice a lot of similarities with the Link's Awakening, like the graphic style. So you just got to remember it's a top-down. So that's the big difference. It's the first top-down in how long?
Forever.
Time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like it pretty much like they have two completely different games of Zelda. You have your top-down and you have your 3D. Well, they came out with both within 2 years. So this one's your top-down, whereas Breath of the Wild is your first-person or third-person 3D.
So, providing
not to mention, part of the reason I feel like they have a top-down and a 3D in the way you're talking about, Chad, is also technology.
Yeah.
2D was all the rage when Legend of Zelda began, but then when Ocarina of Time hit and things were three-dimensional, that was huge. So correct, I think along the way, they really tried to further that and keep up with 3D demands, but they also managed to make entries along the way that were still 2D and not let that become irrelevant, which I think is commending.
Props.
Yeah. Cool.
Making a game that doesn't stand up to other games and yet is still just as popular is...
Yeah. So basically anybody out there that has not played any Zelda games out there, definitely jump into pretty much any of these titles depending on what system you have, because they're all pretty much amazing. We've definitely hit on the ones that we have played, the major hits in the series, like obviously Ocarina of Time will always be there, which Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, let's see,
the Past.
A Link to the Past and Breath of the Wild. Those are just some of the ones that, were huge for us because, I mean, they were huge installments in the series and they sold really well and they played amazingly. So, but yeah, check all those out, guys. And hopefully, maybe in a future podcast, we'll have more updates on when the Breath of the Wild 2 will come out. If you guys are on YouTube, guys, check this out on any of the podcast apps. You have Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and soon to be Pandora. You can find this also on our host website, buzzsprout.com/thegaming-station. And let's see. What else did you want to add, Mr. Patman?
Nothing. Just be sure to check out our previous episodes and be ready for next week.
Yeah, we obviously could talk about this forever. I mean, we pretty much skipped through a lot of things. And Patty, what's on the plate next week, Mr. Patty?
The idea at the moment is VR. We're going to discuss how it's doing, possible future, and just general concepts, I guess, is the best word for it.
Awesome. The future of gaming. Hopefully VR continues to do as well as it is. I know that there's not a huge audience for VR yet. I myself have a VR. I'm planning on upgrading to a better VR eventually. Do you guys think there will ever be a Zelda VR?
Interesting.
What an interesting question.
I know.
I would love to see one.
Tune back in next week. We could talk about more of that. I don't know. Nintendo and VR obviously didn't have the best Virtual Boy. So, I mean, they had the great concept in the beginning, that's for sure. So, but other than that, how did you want to wrap it up, Mr. Patman?
I don't have a lot else. Just I'm looking forward to talking about VR next week, and that pretty much is it.
Alrighty, Mr. Patty.
I just wanted to say, this was a great week. I think we had a wonderful conversation about everything. And then secondly, I don't know if it appeared to you, Patman, but I feel like we had a bit of a PvP there in the middle of talking about Zelda.
I definitely got that vibe.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a sneaky PvP for you guys, and
secret segment.
Yeah, a secret segment.
Yeah,
but other than that, I'm excited for next week. Y'all have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you, Patman and Patty, for hanging out and joining into the podcast. For everybody else out there on the podcast, check out we have a Facebook site now. We'll be getting a Twitter here soon. The Gaming Station for both of those. And yeah, check out, if you guys want to see the video version of this, check out the YouTube channel, Chadimus Productions. Patman will hopefully be getting his YouTube channel started soon. He is now freshly into a brand new place and looking to future endeavors and content creating, I believe.
That is correct. I finally pretty much all settled in a new place, so looking forward to that.
Awesome, and maybe we can get Patty in the future to start streaming as well.
Oh, I've thought about it.
Good. Thinking is the best way to go. So, guys, from me, keep smiling, keep gaming, and from the Gaming Station, and we are signing off.